And welcome in everybody to another episode of the High Low Sports Podcast. We appreciate y'all for joining us here on this Wednesday evening, or if it's one of your favorite places to listen to podcasts later on in the week. For the first time in a while, we will not be doing NFL predictions as the NFL season is officially back. And it is DJ joined as always by my co-host Kelcey. And Kelcey, I am glad you're here because we need to take a moment for you to apologize to the American people for what you have done. You know exactly what you did, and you have a moment right now to apologize.
I don't know what you're talking about. I did nothing. I don't know.
After an entire summer of saying you don't trust CMC, you are worried about the calf, you're not going to take him, you wouldn't take him number 1 in fantasy. On our live stream, you take him number 1 in fantasy, and what happens?
You know what? I don't feel bad about this because me, along with 6 million other people, we're all scrambling for a running back that was still sitting there on the free agent market. And if you were smart, you would have picked him up.
If you were smart, everybody else did not have to worry about it. So he was right there for the taking because everyone else was already set.
Yeah, that's fair. No, it's funny because I had the opportunity in another league as well to take CMC first overall. And because I took him in our league first, I was like, you know what? We're not doing it twice. We're not going to get burned in 2 leagues just in case this happens. And yeah, so I didn't take him, and I was more than happy. And my boss took him, and now I got to laugh at my boss as he texted me and said, "You left me with CMC, and this is what happens." And I said, "Sorry, not sorry." He lost, by the way, which I thought was hilarious.
It had to be done. So for all the people out there, apologies in advance. But at the same time, you should have known better. Don't be like the other 6 million people. If you would listen to our fantasy football rankings, you would know DJ said not to take him number 1.
Yeah, we talked about this all the time. This is one of those things I wish our audio didn't get corrupted from the expo, from the fantasy football expo, because we had this conversation with several guests. If you take somebody over number 1 overall, who are you taking? All of them said the same thing, CMC. But we always ask the question, well, what if he's hurt, right? This was the thing. And hearing people's explanation, like, yeah, but also you look like an idiot if you don't take him number 1 and he doesn't get hurt. So that's the counter to all of this is, well, you kind of hit a boom or bust situation here. And that's kind of how every number 1 pick really is if we're getting down into it.
Absolutely. We still got 16 more weeks to go, so anything can change. It could have just been a 1-week little hiccup as well. But enough blaming Kelcey and enough throwing some dirt on him as well. Now we've done enough of that. We haven't even started talking college football yet. But now it's a good time,
wow.
I think, is any. So that's going to take us right into the first part of the show. That is the tip-off. The tip-off, of course, brought to you by our friends over at SeatGeek. Use code HighLowSports for $20 off your first set of tickets to any sporting event or concert or anything you'd like to go to, whether it is college football game, NFL game, or anything in between. Go ahead and use Belly Up Sports for $20 off. And as we mentioned, college football is officially back. We're a couple of weeks in. We've seen some good. We've seen some bad. We've seen some ugly. There's some early Heisman watches. There's some early get them out of the league watches. There's Florida State fans saying that they're going to eat dog poop and then not following through with it and everything in between. But we're not going to go too deep into it. But what we're each going to do is we're going to talk about one team that we like so far. It's 2 weeks in, but we're like, okay, yep, that's a team that we're looking out for. And we're going to talk about one team that we're like, yeah, get them off my screen. Not including Florida State. We've probably going to make fun of them a few more times, but we've done quite a bit of that so far. So we won't add to that one. We'll have a little variety compared to the last 2 weeks. I'll go ahead and start us off with this one. First team that I'm going to say really kind of liking, and in that they're exceeding expectations so far, but we'll see how long it goes. I'm going to go with Oklahoma out of the gate. I know they haven't exactly had a murderer's row to start. It's been a couple of cupcakes. Defensively, we talked about before, they have one of the better defenses in the conference and a veteran group out there. Offensively, I was kind of curious how they were going to Dylan Gabriel transferring to Oregon. I was curious how that was going to adjust, especially going to the SEC, young receivers. I think they've done a pretty good adjustment so far. I think they're ranked 15th, 16th. So nothing game breaking. That's kind of where they're going to be the years that they're not trash. So I think that's about fair. I think they could creep into that top 10. They do have a murderer's row. So they'd have to win a couple of games where it's like, oh, they did that now. And I don't know if they're going to do that. It's a first year in the SEC. This isn't quite the squad you probably wanted to do it with. But I will say, I think they've exceeded a little bit of the expectations as far as, for lack of better terms, they've covered the spread the first game. And that was a huge spread. Like, they've done what they needed to do so far. So I'm going to put Oklahoma as a team that I'm like, you know what? Tip of the cap. You've done pretty well out of the gate so far. Like, we'll see. It hasn't got to the schedule yet. But for where we're at right now and not picking the obvious ones, because we're going to talk about the obvious ones a little bit later in a different manner. So I'm going to ignore some of those blatantly no-ish ones. But I'm going to say, you know what? Pretty good for Oklahoma. I'm going to say pretty good start for them.
Yeah, I don't hate the Oklahoma pick. I think you're right, though. Obviously, they haven't gotten into the like to call it the schedule,
Hmm.
the SEC schedule. Anyways, sorry, old
No, it's
SEC.
accurate. But
But yeah, no, I do think it's going to be interesting to see what happens when they get into the teeth of their schedule. I think that's the telling time. But I don't hate Oklahoma by any means. I do think there's still a 4-loss team this year. Once they get into it, I think there's just going to be a couple matchups. However, based off what we've seen so far out of the SEC, it might not be the teams you expect them to lose to that they're going to lose to. So, yeah, there's a lot of pieces there to kind of figure out for Oklahoma when they get into the heart of it. But for now, it looks pretty good.
they might
There's
surprise us and just be a 3-loss team. You never know.
yeah, I think this is exactly the situation that they wanted to have coming into the SEC for the first year, where you're going 2-0, you're starting to get into some early games in the season, going into week 3, where you start to see some SEC teams pop up on their schedule. They're not like Georgia and playing week 2 cupcake again. They at least played a dry, I guess a biscuit, I guess is the best way to call it. It wasn't really a cupcake, but it was a slightly still doughy.
Like a McMuffin, maybe. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, but but no, I mean, we'll see what they do, obviously going forward. But yeah, I do like them so far. So far they fit with the SEC. So, uh, bucking the trend, the SEC fan, by the way, not choosing an SEC team first, and I do want to. I think I have to do this one first because I think I've beat up on them long enough. If you ask Jared, I think he thinks all I do is beat up on this team, um, and that's his bandwagon team, the Miami Hurricanes. I
Oh,
think
disappointed in the Hurricanes now.
no. I have been disappointed in the Hurricanes. I think in this situation, I am really high on what Miami's
Oh,
doing.
I got you.
Cam Ward, 300 yard games back to back, 3 touchdowns. Huge win over Florida in week 1, week 2, obviously. Yes. But this is the first time we've seen the guy that's been rumored to be a Heisman candidate for 3 years now really be that guy that stepped into being a Heisman candidate so far in 2 weeks. So I think I'm high on what Miami's doing, and I'd even say their defense looks really good. That front four, 3.5, however you want to describe their defensive line, um, they're really good. Their secondary continues to be good. They put out some pros recently, and it looks like they're going to continue that trend at the end of this year. So yeah, for me, Miami right now, Miami of Florida, by the way, not Miami of Ohio. Be very specific here. They're my kind of surprise high on team right now. I didn't think they would get. I honestly thought Florida would upset them week 1. If I'm being honest, I didn't think they'd run Ruckshaw over Florida.
I gotta say, Cam Ward is every bit as advertised. Like he is as dynamic as he was in the Pac-12 RIP, and he has carried it over across the coast very well. Their defense is a little surprising, like you mentioned. They lost both starting safeties last year too.
Yeah,
They've done a good job carrying over. And if we're being honest, we look at the ACC. Who not a whole lot for them to really deal with. If we're being 100% honest, I mean Clemson. Then we're not even going to entertain that idea at this point. Who else? Maybe NC State's pretty decent sometimes, I guess. But like,
right
I
now,
don't want to say.
right now, NC State's pretty decent as long as they
Yeah.
don't play a team they should beat.
Weirdly enough, yeah. Like it feels. I don't want to say a clear path because there's no such thing, but like a less painful path than some of the other teams they have for a team of their caliber. So it should be ACC championship should be well within their grasp by what we've seen so far. That's for sure.
Yeah,
We
for sure.
say that now they will drop the next game because of that, but
Yeah, I think that's for sure for Miami. I think it should be the goal for Miami every year, but I think right now specifically, it really should be their goal. I think they have the. This is the first time they've had a real quarterback in a while. A guy that is going to go out there and actually play. And watching him throw the ball is something else. There's a couple other guys that you've seen that kind of like live action off of an arm. This is impressive, and on top of that, he is very mobile, but he's not mobile to run. He's mobile to pass, and that's a huge plus in college because as soon as you see a quarterback run away, usually in college you're like, oh well, he's going to go run for yardage. Instead, when he pulls up to pass, he's passing to likely a wide open receiver, which is huge in today's day and age.
100%. Like what's weirdest too when he is running, like he does take off. He has the most. We joke about Lamar when he throws the ball. It has the most like fine. I will throw it lackadaisical. Like almost how dare you bother me with having to do this. When Cam Ward runs, it looks like that. He's like fine, I'll do it, but I'm not happy. Even when he's about to get tackled, he's going out of bounds. It's so nonchalant. It's just like whatever. Get out of my face. It's a very nonchalant way of playing, which is fun. Assuming he doesn't get cracked doing it.
Yeah, and plus he has a bunch of arm angles, which is really cool.
Yeah,
I enjoy watching a guy actually throw from arm angles. different arm slots. I think it's huge for kind of his thought of progression into the NFL. Obviously, we know what Patty can do with that, but it's not just Patty. Every really good quarterback in the NFL has the ability to drop down into a different slot and throw the ball. It's just kind of the nature of the business. Being able to kind of buck that training trend, if you will, and go with something that's a little more freestyle is kind of what sets you apart when you get into the draft. So obviously, I'm talking 14 games ahead of now,
Hmm.
but at the same time, it's something to consider when you look at Cam Ward. So I think this Miami team is more than set up for success this year.
Absolutely. If they don't make the playoffs, somebody's got to get fired. I don't know if it's
Yeah,
Cristobal or somebody else, barring major injury, of course. Like there's always the caveat, but like it's a yellow brick road straight to the college football playoff form right
yeah.
now. They just have to
For them,
walk
it's
that
an
straight.
orange brick. It's a very orange brick road.
That that's true too. Some little green accents on the side too. So, but now we have to look at the other end of the spectrum. There are some teams that have let us down. We're not going to include Florida State. I'm going to keep making fun of them, but we're not going to include them as our own teams. So we'll talk about some teams that we've been just not very high on so far, based and more or less for one reason or another, we haven't loved what they haven't. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna throw a little bit of a change up on this one. I'm gonna pick an undefeated team. I'm gonna go with Oregon. They're obviously undefeated. They're ranked up there in the top 10. They came in ranked 2 or 3. Dylan Gabriel was the leader for the Heisman at like plus 180 odds or something like that. And they've won. But when you watch them, it just feels like they're not as sharp like they were last year, where everything was so precise, everything was like on time, on target. They were a well-oiled machine, like what we saw them do to Colorado in the first half, for example. What we saw them against Washington, we saw them against USC. We haven't really seen that as much so far this year. They've seemed like they've been. It feels like they're getting used to the Big Ten. I'm not 100% sure what it is because they haven't even got into the Big Ten schedule yet. But like
Yeah,
playing Idaho, if I'm not mistaken, and Boise State, they just haven't quite looked as sharp. So I'm a little bit, I won't say disappointed because that makes it sound like they're being bad. They're bad. It's just the expectation was so high, and now you just look pretty good. I think they play Ohio State. They play plenty of guys to be like, you know what? Screw you, DJ. So I will be wrong within a month, I'm sure. But at this point, I expect just a touch more from Oregon. And everyone was telling me when we did the college football show that Dylan Gabriel is the Heisman Trophy front runner and Oregon's going to win the Natty. And I'm
definitely.
just, yeah, you were one of them. I'm just like, you know what? They look fine. They look like a playoff team, but not that team. When you look at the other top teams like Georgia, for example, absolutely killing people so far. So a little disappointing, and that's mostly because I'm avoiding the obvious answers here right now. But I expected just a touch more from Oregon at this point.
That's fair. Yeah, Oregon has been disappointing to say the least. Um,
A little bitter they
just
didn't cover the
just
spread, so this might be biased too. I
yeah.
will throw
I
that
would say
caveat out there for the Pacific Northwest.
it's very much a situation where we're just mad that our bets didn't hit with Oregon. They've let us down too many times, 2 times specifically on this betting situation. Um, I've never liked when they go back to this throwback. I love the jersey, but I don't like their performance on the field when they go back to this throwback home jersey they have. Because every time it feels like they just suck in it. Like I shouldn't say suck. They're just not the Oregon that you saw last year with Dan Lanning just kind of leading the charge. Bo Nix going perfect at quarterback. Obviously, we're not expecting that from Dylan Gabriel, but at the same time, you're supposed to be the best quarterback in NCAA right now. Like, prove that you're the best quarterback in college football. That's where I'm at with that. By the way, thanks for that low blow there. I'm
All right.
pretty sure that's
I felt
Kevin.
bad making fun of you out at the top of the game, but that one, that's a groin shot.
Yeah. Anyways, but no, I mean, I do agree. Oregon's been disappointing. Obviously, they have the opportunity to turn it around real quick and in a hurry. But yeah, I definitely agree. They've been slightly disappointing for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I can go anywhere other than this low hanging fruit that is there. So DJ, I'm going to break the rules. No surprise whatsoever that I'm breaking the rules and I'm going with a team that is so obviously disappointing to everybody. I think when I say their name, nobody will be surprised. The Colorado Buffaloes. I think everybody can agree 28-10 was not the performance we saw last week. That should have been
28-10 feels generous.
should have been a 58-10 type of performance. Your starting quarterback walks out of the game with 2 minutes left to go. Doesn't look good. That's something that LeBron does as well. And guess what I said about when LeBron did it? Doesn't look good. So I'm going to keep that same energy when I watch Shedeur walk off the field with 2 minutes to go. And I'm going to say, Shedeur, doesn't look good. Yes, you might have had a small nagging injury. It's nothing compared to what your brother got in that game. And all the well wishes to Shiloh. We hope he comes back before the draft, and hope this doesn't affect his future. But Shadur, this offense, the way he handled that press conference after the game, the way this team looks going into week 3 against Colorado State, who gave them every little bit of energy Colorado State could muster last year and then some, you have to figure out a way to win this game and win it emphatically to look good. And for me, I don't know if they are there yet. And I think it's a situation where, yes, you've had a lot of turnover in your 2 years there if you're Colorado and you're Dion, but you're supposedly got better. And we talked about this a little bit last year going into the season, and this year as well. We've talked about it a little bit. There is something to be said about keeping a cohesive unit through 2 years, at least through your transition year. That's always been a piece of this, that through your transition year, it's usually good to keep a cohesive unit, add some pieces, but really keep a cohesive unit so you can build a little bit going into the next year. You can build that idea of a locker room. Now, with that said, I get it. You were a near winless team. So yeah, there's not a lot of good vibes coming out of that locker room beforehand, but I think it's safe to say Colorado right now, there is just not a lot of good. You barely scraped by North Dakota State. And now I say that knowing full well North Dakota State might be the best team in FCS. But I mean, you're supposed to be this good. You're supposed to have one of the best quarterbacks in college football right now. And none of these things look true. So I need to see something from Colorado. Maybe Dylan Raiola is just that good with Nebraska. But the fact that defense still looks spotty on Nebraska's side and you didn't punish them a single time and you gave up running in the second quarter, we have a problem. So I'm going to say Colorado for me is the most disappointing by far.
Check. That is rule number 5,327 broken in the last 5 years too. So we're keeping a running tally, but we haven't hit 6,000 broken rules yet. So we're on a good pace right now, considering
maybe by the end of the year I'll hit 6,000.
It's just the beginning, but I do agree with you just because I felt like these were 2 very winnable games for him. What worries me is what we saw last year. The exact same issues are kind of there again. They were losing in a different way, or it was a different issue. That'd be one thing. Like, okay, you patch one hole, but another leak came out. That's part of building the program. But it's the exact same thing, but worse. The offensive line is very, very. We're gonna say shaky. I'm gonna be. We're not gonna overrule it. We're not gonna go out of nature. Shadur still holds the ball a little bit long. Sometimes he just has to get the pill out. Easier said than done. I'm not back there. I get it, but sometimes you just got to get the ball out. Pat Shermer, the play caller, they gotta dial up some more easy stuff. It feels like everything they do, like that pick six, a hitch route from the far side hash while backed up into your goal line. That is some dirty work. Like, my God, you're asking Anthony Richardson or Josh Allen or those guys with that arm to throw it is brutal. Let alone asking a kid in college to do with those college hash marks. That's filthy work. But
yeah,
I think they gotta make the job, make it a little bit easier. They gotta get the offensive line in a groove. They gotta get Shadur in a groove. And defensively, like you mentioned, with that defense, especially with Prime at the top as the head man, Warren Sapp coming in to coach the D line, especially, I expect their pass defense to be a little more solid. The run defense, I guess they rush the quarterback, they run by you, but I expected with that pedigree back there, just the pass defense to be a little stronger. The back end to be a little stronger. Travis Hunter is great. We all know that future top 5 pick as a whole cohesive unit, and him playing 90% of the snaps both ways is kind of ridiculous. And it shows. I know it's great that he can do it, but by the fourth quarter, you could see he's a step back. He's still awesome, but it's like you could see it wear on him, which I wish they could find a way to not do that personally. I wish they just stick him at corner, stick him at receiver, then spot duty the other one on occasion. But
yeah, I do think it should depend on the matchup. I think Colorado State, I shouldn't see him at corner very often. I think he should be a receiver for Colorado State games. On the flip side, against Nebraska, I would have liked to see him more times at corner. Mind you, I say that knowing full well the guy was 10 receptions, 110 yards on the game. So, I mean, it's crazy because he is so good. You do want to keep him out there, but I do think he should be on a kind of a pitch count in a lot of ways, where through 3 quarters, maybe don't roll him out every single possession. Maybe roll him out the first quarter in every possession. Maybe the second quarter, take a couple possessions off in the in between game. We always see where it's just back and forth punting. Maybe just don't keep him out there for a couple possessions. Third quarter, start him in maybe first drive for each side, and then after that, kind of working his way in. And then fourth quarter, yeah, be out there every play, but I don't need you out there every single play from the standpoint of like we should be good enough. We have enough good, talented players that we shouldn't need that. But at the same time, what does that really mean for Colorado? I don't know.
What's interesting with him too is I feel like I know he was the number one corner coming out. That was kind of his big thing, but I think he might be a little bit better of a receiver. Just when I watch him play, I think he's a little more natural as a receiver. So I think
I
if
think
he
he struggles tackling specifically as a corner. I just don't think he's big enough to. And again, I don't fault him for this. It's not on him in the grand scheme of it. It's just how his body's built. I just don't think he's physically capable of taking down a tackler every single opportunity he gets. I think there's a couple he kind of takes the business decision to step away, if you will.
I would say him being a skinnier guy too, it's harder when those thicker receivers are in a jump ball situation. But then when we see him play receiver, he has the ball skills to get that ball even over other corners too. Like he just has a very interesting knack for a guy who's not in who hasn't played receiver as much to just the way he catches the ball, the way he doesn't run the cleanest routes yet since he's still a learning receiver, but he
Yeah.
still finds a way to get open. He has a good feel for space. He has a good feel for the sticks. So I think if he does to go to the NFL and he has to pick one, I feel like if he picks receiver, he's still going top 5. I think
Oh
corner is
yeah.
more needed. Like corner is a more premium position because there's a billion receivers nowadays and a lot fewer people that can actually play corner. So a corner, he's a little more valuable, but I think he's better at receiver, if that makes sense. Like it's
Yeah.
either way, he's getting paid top 5. Like if he doesn't get drafted top 5 right now, there's a problem. Barring injury, scandal, tomfoolery, or the biggest drop off over the next 14 games we've ever seen.
Before we move away from Travis for just a second, I do have a question for you because we talk about this a lot with corners
Mhm.
specifically. Kind of continuing your career as a safety. For him, do you think it's a better opportunity for him to play mostly safety and then kind of spot as a corner, maybe as a slot corner specifically, that nickel corner? Do you think that would be a better opportunity for him to play that defense side? Because I love his ball skills. I love his ability to read and be where the ball is. My problem with him has always just been the tackling side of things. Do you
I
think
like
that's
it.
a better opportunity for him?
I think I would like him more on the outside. We haven't seen him at this level just have to play corner. So that's why I'm not 100% sure too. Because I do wonder, like some of those situations, the business decision situations, or just those jump ball situations we saw it against Stanford, where down the stretch he kind of got. We remember the Stanford game. It just wasn't his best game. I'm not going to pile
Yeah.
onto that. That's not what we're here for. But I think if he could just play corner, I like him as an outside corner. I think he has especially you get him on the NFL diet, the NFL regimen on top of it, because we already know it's been well documented. He's such a hardworking kid who's locked in all the time. There's
Yeah.
only just so much you can do when you have school on top of everything. So I think give him a year in the NFL, and you're looking at I'm not going to compare him to an NFL corner because we hate when people do that. We hate it when they did it with
No.
Caleb
Yeah.
Williams out of the gate. So we're not going to do that. But
I mean, right now in college, you think he would be
yeah,
better off if you slide him to safety for now?
I think if you let him just play corner and not have to play receiver, I think he'd be I think he'd be the second best corner in NCAA outside of Will Johnson.
That's fair.
So as safety, he'd probably be the best safety too. I think he is that natural. I know what you're saying. Like he could do that as well. I think you put him anywhere and let him just do that, he's going to be awesome. It's when you can only stretch the rubber band so many different directions, I guess. But I agree with you. If you put him at safety and let him spot at nickel, that might actually clean up some of their different defensive issues because you'd be able to move around like the Rams did with Jalen Ramsey during the Super Bowl year. So it is an option. They could think about it too, but they're gonna have to change their offense from throwing the ball to Travis Hunter every other play because I don't think you can do that and have him do that at the same time. But I do like the idea. It is something to take note of for sure if they want to kind of, from my outsider's perspective, a way they could turn the season around a bit.
Yeah, and mind you, if you're like me, I don't hate anything Colorado is trying to do with him. I just do think that there's sometimes with a younger athlete, maybe don't let him be his own worst enemy just yet. Like
Exactly. Like
you have a duty to still somewhat protect him. I know they're all professional athletes at college levels, but just think about it. That's all we're
saying
asking.
we saw it with the Utah running back whose name eludes me. Is like Taki, I think it was, who
Yeah,
not
yeah.
mistaken.
Vaki.
Vaki, there we go. Yeah. Played running back and a little bit of defensive back duty as well. So
Yeah.
spot duty, I think, would be better
And yeah,
for him as opposed to
he was mostly a safety, and
exactly.
they used him at running back as their kind of third and fourth running back.
Exactly. Like, so spot duty, I would love that for him. Like, oh shit, it's third down and 10 in the third quarter of a tied game. Yo, Travis, come out there. If nothing else, take the top off and scare people, or maybe you catch a hitch and go 50. Well, how spot duty, I think would be great for him. But neither here nor there. I still think he's top 5 pick no matter what, but I agree with you. We would like Colorado out of the gate with they should have been an easier win against North Dakota State. I appreciate it because I bet North Dakota State to cover that 8-point spread or whatever it was. So I appreciate it. And then against Nebraska, I expected it to not be over in the first quarter. That's
That's
kind of
true.
what I was really expecting at that point.
Yeah, that's fair.
But we did talk a little bit about there. We each won a little bit of money from that North Dakota State spread, and introducing a new thing for our fellow gambling degenerates. If you've been following us on socials, you've seen DJ's best bets coming out quite frequently. Well, we want to add something to the show, and it's going to be Kelcey's top prop here. So we're going to be talking a little bit about Kelcey's favorite bet coming up on the week. Could be a prop bet, could be a money line, could be a spread, could be an over under. It could be a no hit, no run, no touchdowns in the first quarter. It could be anything you could find on a sports book coming up for this weekend in college, NFL. Can't do baseball. We're not gonna do baseball quite yet. Baseball is we're just past that betting season right now. But Kelcey, what's your top prop now as we head into this weekend?
Yeah, so I wish I could use a prop bet for this, and I should say I wish because we are recording this on Wednesday at 8 p.m. It's 8:42 right now. Problem with that is college doesn't release their prop bets until Thursday, so I don't have a prop bet for you. But I do have a underrated money line game that I do think people should look at, and that's Arizona Kansas State. Right now, Arizona are plus 285. They're the dog. You have Kansas State, 15th ranked Kansas State, as a minus 285. If nobody's watched Fafita play as a quarterback for Arizona, we're talking about a potential dark horse for Heisman right now. The guy's a stud. Obviously, people are going to be like, "Oh, but they only beat Northern Arizona 22-10." Yeah, forget that. Forget that. Just watch this guy play and tell me they can't play in any game. And also, Kansas State has a history of losing in a not really top 25 matchup, but in a situation where it's that rank, like within 5 rankings, they have just always struggled historically. So I think this is a situation where I'm going to see Kansas State try to take on Arizona, and they're not going to be able to win. I think Arizona is going to pull off the upset here. I think it's an easy opportunity. Plus 285 for Arizona to win this one on the road in Kansas State. So that's Manhattan, Kansas. Just something to consider. Obviously, if there was a prop bet, I'm looking at Cam Ward and whatever his yardage is throwing the ball, I'm taking the over. I'm just not even going to lie about it. And if you want another one, Nico Iamavilla, the quarterback for Tennessee, just whatever prop he has for passing as well. Just go ahead and take it. Maybe even rushing yards in that one. If he has like a plus or 25 over 25 rushing yards, go ahead and take that as well because he's averaged about 35 to 40. So something to consider as well.
I do like that one. I think Arizona's been surprisingly decent too. I know that there's a close game you don't want to see, but I think Arizona is going to be quite good. So I like that one as well for sure. That's a good one. Might be adding a few sports books here really quickly while next time you were talking. But before we get out of the college football thing, we have one last thing to do. We have the first ever top 12 college football playoffs. So what are we going to do? We're going to rank our top 4 teams because we're going to be ironic about it. Now that there's 12 available, we're only going to go through 4 because we're not going to be here for 2 hours going through the top 12 teams each. So I'll go and go first because mine's kind of close to what the AP has right now, if I'm not mistaken. Number 1, Georgia. Not a whole lot more needs to be said. Number 2, I have Texas. They look like an absolute well-oiled machine, and I think Quinn Ewers looks like the best quarterback in the country right now. Number 3, Ohio State. They have 2 easy games, and they beat the you-know-what out of both of them, and they're absolutely loaded top to bottom. 4, I have Kelcey's Mississippi State Rope. Or sorry, not Mississippi State. Ole Miss.
Whoa. I was like, hold up now.
I was sorry. I was thinking about Chris Jones said he should have went to Ole Miss and when he went to Mississippi State. So I watched the wrong interview right before the show. But so I do and then I got Ole Miss in there. Jackson Dart. He's not the leader for Heisman Trophy right now. He better be in that conversation. I know it's 2 not good teams. I know it. Take it all with a grain of salt, but he has been incredible in halves. He hasn't even played games yet. He's played halves, and he has like 12 touchdowns already. And has, what is it, 89% completion or something ridiculous through that time. He's been dynamic. So Ole Miss, I have it number 4 right now. Plenty of other teams on the cusp, but I like Georgia, Texas, Ohio State, then Ole Miss is my top 4 right now.
Okay. You know what? I don't hate that by any means. But I'm going to change it up a little bit, and it's going to be just down to the fact of rankings of the teams they beat. All right. So I'm going Texas number 1.
Ooh, okay.
Because of the slacking they put on Michigan. Yes, we know it's not the same Michigan team, blah, 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 blah. I don't care. That's top 10 Michigan team. That's a top 10 ranking. And
not anymore.
Yeah, not anymore. 17th now, but still higher ranked than the team that Georgia beat. So in both situations, both before the game and after, and when they fell in the rankings. So right now I have Texas, Georgia. So a little flip flop there. And again, if you wonder why Georgia, Clemson right now ranked 22, 1-1. In a kind of easy to win ACC, so they can't really struggle as much. So I have Texas, Georgia, and this is where I get really weird. Forget Ohio State, forget Alabama. They're not 3 and 4. I'm going Ole Miss at 3. I do think Jackson Dart should be your front runner or 1B at most.
Okay.
And then I'm going to go with who I think is the other front runner for Heisman at number 4. And again, Jared, if you're listening, turn your mic off because I don't want to hear you say, "Oh, I told you, I told you." Get it. Get rid of it. Miami. I'm going to go Miami of Florida at number 4 because right now, better wins than Ohio State and Alabama. So just 2 games in, we're not talking a lot, but there's only 10 more to go. So that's something to keep in mind here. Yeah, I mean, there's 12 teams, so it's kind of just down to a bye. But yeah, at the end of the day, right now for me, I have Texas, Georgia, Ole Miss, and then Miami of Florida. So the U is back in the top 4. Yeah, I mean, I feel like just right now, my top 4 is going to change in a week. I guarantee it. But at the same time, you just got to go off of the wins, the vibes the teams are giving. Ole Miss honestly might be higher if they had played somebody that was ranked in the top 5 or top 10 and beat them. So I'm not going to give them that yet, but yeah, still really good.
With the new conference realignment, we're going to see a lot of these teams play some really, really good teams and not just teams that have a decent ranking. Then we find out they're not as good later on, like Michigan and Clemson at this point. We're going to see. We got Ohio State and Oregon coming up, but we got that one coming for sure. We got Georgia and Texas are going to match up later in the season. We got some absolute smoke show, flamethrower, whatever you want to call them. I'm not going to say gas because I'm not from that generation, but there is a lot of really good matchups coming up in college football for sure. The good part about this conference realignment, even though they did the Pac-12 dirty.
Give me all the strong matchups. I'm so excited. What is it? October 5th? I am so excited. So October 12th, you're right.
That's the one where I don't text DND.
Yeah, I ironically took vacation either side of that weekend. Not intentional by any means, but now it's 100% there's plans to watch college football and have a good time.
I'm very thankful they picked that weekend because the next weekend is when I will be out of town for a different plan. So thank goodness that it was the 19th and not the 12th. I dodged a bullet there.
Exactly.
That is going to do it here for tip off, and that's going to now take us into Kelcey's third part of favorite part of every show, and that is now the main event. And for the main event, it's in the title. We kind of knew it was coming. We got the NFL. It is officially back 1 week down. We're going to talk a little bit of overreactions as far as like, oh my God, are they dead? And some everybody RELAX. We're going to talk about some ones that are everything's an overreaction in week 1, but we're going to talk about ones that are overreactions in a positive and ones where it's like, okay, it was bad, but everybody just cool the temperature. Everybody, it's going to just relax. It's 1 week. So for the week 1 overreaction in a positive way, like, hey, they did great, and I think this could continue. I'm going to go with your Dallas Cowboys. I really liked what I saw from your Dallas Cowboys. I'm sorry if that was your pick or if you just hate me talking about the Cowboys, but
yeah, the last one.
Okay, I'll keep it quick then. I won't poison the water too much here, but
I was looking for my boo button. I don't have a boo. Sorry.
Boo. There we go. I got you. I'll boo myself for it. But when the game was quote unquote competitive, aka the first half when they were both trying, Dak looked like he deserved to be paid all that money. Like he was. I know it's regular season, you don't care, but unfortunately, that expectations that come with Dak have made us almost forget how good he really can be at any given moment. Especially this defense at home, the number 1 ranked defense at home last year. He torched them when he had to. That touchdown to Brandon Cooks was a thing of beauty. I don't know how many actual quarterbacks in the NFL can and would make that throw with a 6-man blitz with an empty backfield. He threw an absolute, dropped it in a bucket to Brandon Cooks. He knew his speedster. He knew his matchup. Juan Thornhill's no joke at safety. That's a 2-time Super Bowl champ, who unfortunately is now injured. I don't know if it was from that play or something else.
Pro Bowler as well.
I think he has made a Pro Bowl as well. Drops it in a bucket for him. The darts to CeeDee Lamb, who they have not had a chance to work together a whole lot this offseason, did not miss a beat. And I know CeeDee Lamb is that dude. So he is one of the easiest guys to throw to, but some of those throws he was making outstanding. The coverages, getting the ball out, didn't make any dumb decisions, really didn't throw any bad ones that were dropped. He just played really great when it mattered. Rico Dowdle at running back. Zeke got in the end zone. Something about Zeke wearing number 15 in Ohio we joked about. It just hits differently. They could do that every single week. It might be a different Zeke. I think Rico Dowdle is going to be nice. The offensive line looks pretty good too, especially going against that front 7. And that defense. Mike Zimmer, either y'all must have forgot. The Roy Jones Jr. needs to be playing right now because when he's just a D coordinator, not a head coach of Kirk Cousins, he can really bring it. Maybe not to the same level as Dan Quinn. They brought the house though. They made the Browns. There's a lot of problems going on in Cleveland right now, and the Cowboys started at least a couple of them. There's plenty of other problems going on there, but the Cowboys at least started a few of them with what they brought on Sunday. Micah Parsons, I'm mad because when we did our predictions, I wrote his name in for Defensive Player of the Year, so we'd all have M's. Because then you had Miles, our fan vote had Montez. I was going to do Micah, but then I changed my mind. I got scared and I picked Chris Jones. So now I'm mad because this means Micah Parsons is going to win it. But I like what I saw from your Dallas Cowboys. They looked like there was no hangover, nothing slacking. They didn't do anything in the offseason after going all in. They barely re-signed their. No, they look good. Them and the Eagles is going to be head to head for the division. I think the whole way through.
That's fair. That's
I know you hate this, so we'll move on quickly.
I will say this: my favorite spot throughout all of that is 100% Trayvon Diggs looking like Trayvon Diggs again.
The best version of Trayvon Diggs too.
And yes, I know it's against that offense, and they didn't really care at that point in time. But it was still, he's undercutting routes, he's jumping routes in ways that you didn't expect. The position he's being put in is kind of like an underneath cover 2 situation. Where he's in the flats, but he has the range to get in a mid-range out route and get in the way. And that's how his pick came. That's how his almost second pick came. It's impressive to see him back and healthy. I still wish Deron Bland was on the field with him. I'd love to see that. But as of right now, that defense, I agree with you. Big time excitement over that defense. Just so far. Again, though, I don't know how bad the Browns really are and how good the Cowboys really can be. So
when Deron Bland is healthy with Trayvon Diggs, if they could both be on the field healthy at the end of the year, towards the end of the year against the Eagles, those two versus AJ Brown and Devontae Smith is going to be that's a heavyweight fight. That's a pay-per-view matchup. I can't wait for that. So everybody, please get healthy to that point.
Yeah, exactly. But for me, I'm gonna go my kind of high expectations here. My high reactions is a team that actually lost. I'm gonna go with the Colts. I think the performance they put on against the Texans, I think their performance is worth noting. It's the most impressive performance I've seen in a loss in Week 1. I think hands down. I think across the board that was the most impressive performance I saw. And
maybe the Ravens are close number 2, but I get it.
Yeah. I mean, as far as like teams that you didn't have expectations for, I should say. So the Ravens, everybody has expectations for the Ravens. The Colts, for most everybody other than me, seem to have put them well outside of the playoffs, probably not even having a winning record. And they showed that they have every weapon available to them. Healthy, they can be that team that gets into a potential wild card spot, could upset some teams along the way, and maybe sneak their way into the division title. Again, yes, the Texans won. But it wasn't convincing.
Covered the spread. They covered the spread.
Anybody watching Anthony Richardson coming back for his first game since week 4 last year?
11 months to the date.
And then literally darting up that entire defense at times. Obviously, there were a couple bad throws in there. You expect that from somebody who hasn't seen a live defense really in 11 months. But he looked good. A guy that's played 13 total games of starting quarterback play in his entire career since high school. And he looked really good, so much so he had the throw of this of the Week 1 easily, where he slips and then throws a 60-yard bomb to Alec Pierce, which was just absolutely beautiful. And by the way, if nobody saw our tweet, get enough Alec Pierce slander. We're tired of it. I'm tired of it. I'm personally tired of it. That man can fly, and when he actually has a quarterback that can throw him the ball, it's fantastic to watch. So for me, the Colts,
Jordy Nelson reincarnated. I know Jordy Nelson's not dead, but White Lightning is back in the form of Alec Pierce.
He needs to perfect those short routes first, the short medium routes. But I think deep routes, absolutely, Jordy Nelson revived.
I just meant as far as white person that somehow is running way too fast for his own good.
I was going to say Wayne Corbett if I could flash back that far, if people can keep up with me, or Tim Dwight maybe.
Sir, our audience does not. Our audience isn't in dentures yet.
Hey, what can I say?
I don't have a walker.
I mean, I do, but that's a different conversation. But no, I just think if I'm going to give a kind of high expectation to somebody, some of the other teams that won, obviously, yes, that's great. But did they really set any new higher expectations for me? No. But the Colts actually gave me hope that my crazy pick of making them the division winners isn't that crazy. So
this is the most unique game of week 1. I'm glad you picked it because this will probably be the one we spend the most time on because let's look at the numbers because we all know I'm the numbers nerd here. They lost time of possession 20-40. So the Texans had the ball twice as much as them. They had the fewest first downs in the NFL in all of week 1 across the board. If I'm not mistaken, I think literally the fewest for every team, including teams like the Panthers who got smacked. They had the fewest completions as a team at 9. The lowest completion percentage. They you had and then you lost by 2 points on a failed 2-point conversion attempt. Jonathan Taylor had, I think, like 3 yards a carry. He was pretty much shut down. And then Richardson got 172 yards on 3 passes. And he left probably, what would you say, 110 on the
easily,
field that
yeah.
he missed and 2 touchdowns
Couple,
that AD
yeah, I say a
missed.
couple touchdowns with it.
Exact. Like that was Madden on rookie at some moments, and other moments is college football on Heisman with the stadium cranked all the way up. It was a complete roller coaster ride. Defensively, that pass rush is incredible, but that secondary and run defense has some question marks, so we're going to see what they can do. But that was in the next gen stats era, that was the 3rd longest recorded throw in the entire next gen stats era as far as air yards go. I think they counted as at 65 yards, considering like the angle and the distance. And the longest since I think 2021, 2022, something like that. So the longest in a few years.
Off an
And
unbalanced platform.
while basically falling and fading too after slipping, not stepping into it, not ripping it, not a strong arm competition, falling and throwing basically, like what we do joking around in the backyard or something like that, or throwing a ball to your dog, just casually
Yeah.
flicking it into the bucket. Just absolutely unbelievable. Biggest thing I want to look at too is he took a lot of hits. Well, not a lot, but he took a fair amount of hits for his style play, including one where suplexing is legal for quarterbacks now. Didn't look phased by any of them. Didn't really get up slowly. Didn't like, I think he wiggled once a little bit, but that was about it.
Yeah.
Like, didn't look nervous. Running people over on 4th and goal. Looked a lot like your boy Cam Newton, but like a newer version. I won't say he's that because Cam Newton, a little bit better of a passer because he played so many more games. He played more JUCO games than Anthony's played since high school at this point. Like, there's a lot to like about that, and you see the potential, and that completion percentage isn't getting better this year. I hate to break it to everybody who's a completion percentage nerd. Not just because of him, the Colts are not going to run anything under 20 yards. Like you have the youngest starting quarterback for the 2nd year in a row, and it's the same guy. For the 2nd year in a row, he's the youngest starting quarterback in the NFL. Life is simple when everything turns into man-to-man 20 yards downfield on all verts, basically. You don't have to worry about the complex coverages underneath. After 20 yards, it's all man-to-man, basically. Whether it's quarters, cover 3, cover 2, it's man. They're chasing the streak. And when you could throw it like he can, he outthrows quarters coverage. Like he has the ability to outthrow it. It's just like I said, they are going to be very, very volatile for good, better, and for worse. They are the most interesting team. Like in Q, the Dos Equis guy right now, they're the most interesting team in the league. So they can do what you saw against the Texans, who might be a top 3 team in the NFL right now. And then you could see them lose to the Titans the very next week because they can't hit those deep bombs and then they have the intermediate misses. They are going to be the most interesting team to watch for better and for worse. And Colts fans, I'm sorry. Get your Xanax, get whatever you need. It's going to be a wild ride for better and for worse.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. But yeah, I agree. I think this was an exciting game, and obviously, everything you said about AR is valid. I think
It
it's
makes
safe
no
to say.
sense. He defies logic to a T. And I rambled a lot there on your pick, so I'm
But
going to keep my. Oh, sorry.
you know what though? I just before you move on, the biggest plus for me for this game, besides Anthony Richardson, that secondary looked really good.
Considering what they were going against, you can't have too many complaints. They did lose their starting corner for the year, so they got to replace that. Go figure. But like, considering all the holes, I'd agree with you. Like they held up as well as you can against Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, and Tank Dell with CJ Stroud slinging the pill. Like,
And
there's only
Dalton
so
Schultz.
much you can do. And Dalton Schultz, and while Joe Mixon's giving you 151 yards on the ground on top of it, like you didn't really stop them. They did drop 2 picks on top of it, so you know what? There might be something there. We'll have to wait and see. So I agree with you. They're going to be. Sorry, Colts fans in advance. You're gonna have your anxiety is gonna go up and down in very dramatic ways this year. But well, I'll keep mine really quick because I spent a lot of time on yours because that is a fascinating team when you look at the numbers. For my all right, they had a bad week 1, but let's RELAX. Let's not over panic. Let's not lose our minds. Let's not, don't set the world on fire yet. We're gonna go with the Falcons. I say this knowing darn well that I am mad at Kirk Cousins and I benched Drake London this week because of Kirk Cousins. I I just think that we saw it too with the Jets in the same vein. You have a senior citizen quarterback coming off an Achilles injury who didn't play in the preseason, had limited practice time, came in against an elite pass rushing team in the Steelers. A team that is always well coached on defense. TJ Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick, Dante Jackson now back there, Highsmith, that Cameron Hayward. That's an elite group of defenders when they're all healthy. They're basically an elite defense week one all the time. Offensively, Justin Fields didn't turn the ball over. It was an ugly offensive game. They didn't score a touchdown. They're the top. They're tied for the best division. They're tied for the best record in the NFL and the lone team to win in the AFC North, and they didn't score a touchdown.
That's
But
the most AFC North stat I think I've
to
ever
a
heard.
T, it is hilarious. But Justin Fields did fine. He didn't turn the ball over. He moved it just enough. He got the ball to George Pickens, which is kind of the entire offense is run, run, run. Give George Pickens a chance in one-on-one because he's going to hurt somebody for
And
better.
use Najee Harris effectively, which they did.
Exactly. And then defensively, they got after. But that's enough on the Steelers. That's not them going hot. Like for the Falcons, that's just you have to win that game because you have the Chiefs and the Eagles coming up. So you really needed to win that one. But I'm going to relax because I think there's still a lot of you still got the Panthers twice. That should be 2 wins at this point. You got the Saints twice. You should at least win one of those. I don't know how good they are after week one. We'll have to wait and see. And Tampa Bay, I think you'll split with. I know Bake Show was baking, but that was also Washington's secondary. So I think they should at least split with the Buccaneers. You're not out of this division because it's not like other divisions like Houston might start 5-0, and if you start 0-3, you're out of it, for example. Or in Kansas City in the West, if someone starts 0-3, they're not catching Kansas City. In this case, if you start 0-3 and Tampa Bay starts 1-2 or 2-1, you can catch them feasibly. So I won't overreact yet, but Michael Penix, start getting warmed up, man, because if Kirk Cousins does not bounce back quickly, get Michael Penix out there at this point because that was the worst performance of Kirk Cousins' career in recent memory I could think of. That was miserable by him. You can't lose 3 snaps or whatever. It was like one bouncing off your leg. Like that was rough from Kirk Cousins. The expectations I have of him are too high because I think he is very good, better than a lot of other people do. But he looked like he spent too much time at Coles. That was not his best work. But so Falcons will relax, but at the same time, like if you go 0-3, that's when it's going to start getting a little warm in there.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I'm not going to jump on that bandwagon. That game, I hated everything about that game, so I'll leave that one alone. My team, I'm RELAXing. I'm gonna go with the Denver Broncos. I think the loss sucks. The 26-20 loss to the Seahawks sucked, but there's positives to take out of this. Your rookie quarterback played really well. Yes, he has 2 picks. One of them probably shouldn't have happened. The other one, okay, that's an unfortunate situation. But man, you saw what he could do, getting them kind of prepared. Obviously, you just need a better like anything blocking. I mean, like offense, or, pass blocking or run blocking. Either one of those would work better for him. Vele stepped up as a rookie receiver, looked really good. Their running backs obviously need blocking to succeed. Defense didn't do too terrible. Obviously, if it's not for a bad third quarter, that team probably wins this game. And then you saw Bo Nix in the fourth quarter and what that could really do for you going forward versus Russell last year in the fourth quarter where it wasn't good. Bo Nix in the fourth quarter looked like a 4-year vet. He didn't look like a rookie. Maybe that's the fact he's 25, whatever he is. 45 if you ask Kevin. Yeah, but honestly, he looked good. Cortland Sutton and him are starting to get on a positive wavelength. That Seahawks defense is nothing to scoff at. So, don't beat yourself up too much. That defense is really good. And there's a bunch of athletes on the other side. But yeah, I think Bo Nix and the Broncos right now just RELAX. I think you'll be fine in the long run.
Absolutely. And I want to mention too, like the offense, I don't want to say it was neutered for him, but you could tell it was a rookie's first game offense. Like Sean Payton's not throwing the full book at him yet, too. So like there's a lot of those checkdowns, a lot of simple things. I think as the season goes along, you put more on his plate. You're gonna see even more from him. None of the rookie quarterbacks look good this first week of Ross. None of them look good, but Bo Nix he had his moments too. I think like there is some positives from there for sure.
Yeah, and look, maybe Sean Payton shouldn't have dumbed it down because it seemed like when he got in the 4-minute drill in the end of the game, which he had every play to call himself, he did a lot better. So you start to wonder, like, okay, well, how much are you holding him back and preventing him from succeeding and overthinking these plays versus, like, yes, you're trying to move him along slowly, but maybe he is the type of guy you kind of throw into the pit and see what happens. Whereas some of the other guys that get thrown into a pit and sees what happens, maybe not the guy you need to do that with. Bo Nix is the opposite. I think he is the guy that you can give the keys to the castle and see what happens. It's not
Absolutely.
gonna cost you a castle. It might cost you a tower, but it's not gonna cost you a castle.
Absolutely. And I think we're going to see definitely more of him get the hang of it too. I think, like you mentioned, it's not easy to play when those 12s are 12 in. I know they're not the real 12s. Those real ones are in Kyle Field, but like when the NFL 12s are going, it's a hard place to play, especially with that Michael McDonald defense. Devin Witherspoon, Tariq Woolen, like that defense is going to be menacing. You did what you can. And defensively, they did what they could too. I mean, PS2 is still, if not the number one best corner, he's top three.
Yeah.
Like it's a
I mean, he gave DK Metcalf 29
Absolutely.
yards is all Metcalf ended up with. So talent.
And he'll do that to just about anybody too. Like he is legit. So you know what? Things might be looking up for Denver. I think there's some positives for the future. Maybe not the immediate future, but definitely for sure into the future. So these are what we're looking at for our over and under reactions. Go and let us know in the comments what teams you're already out on and what teams you're like, chill, it's gonna be fine. That team start 0-1, RELAX, however you want to joke about it. But it's gonna wrap up the main event, which is now could take us into Kelcey's favorite part of every show. That is crunch time, and we got a new friend joining us for crunch time today, but not a literal friend.
Yeah, no, a little bit of
Not a human friend, I should say.
Yeah,
Not one that
exactly.
not one that could talk back.
No, we are now crunch time with Rotobot.ai. You guys have heard us talk about this a few times along the way. We ran into these guys at the Fantasy Football Expo, and what Rotobot AI is a AI assistant, if you will, but specifically for fantasy football. So it does things. Well, it will do things like kind of grade your drafts, provide opportunities to who to look for a trade opportunity to improve your team, sleepers that are on the waiver wire that maybe you need to go look at to try to take the next step. And probably my favorite feature is the one we're going to dive into today for crunch time, which is a start and sit situation.
Absolutely. There's a lot. We have multiple fantasy teams, a lot of players to look at. We're gonna see if the Rotobot can help us make some decisions, and we'll be able to check back in next week and see how it did for us, see if it did us dirty or if it did us a solid as well. So let's start at the most important position. Let's start at quarterback. And we talked about him already. AR5 for our league, that one of the leagues we were in, he was the leading quarterback scorer based on the scoring, leading score overall, actually. Kyler Murray, awesome too. Question is, who should I start? Anthony Richardson or Kyler Murray? Keep my quick on playing Anthony Richardson because I think the Packers defense is going to get moved. I think him and Jonathan Taylor are going to move the Packers defense. So give me AR5 for this week.
Yeah, and obviously see, typing the question obviously it's going to take a second to kind of compute what we're trying to ask it and then come back with an answer. So DJ, you went AR5. Obviously, we just talked about him a lot. I'm going to flip it. I'm going to go with Mr. Krabs' legs here with Kyler Murray, and I don't mean Krabs' legs like he stole Krabs' legs. I mean just the sound effect we talked about many times. I do think Kyler in his performance for Buffalo was the right way to go with that. So I have Kyler Murray as kind of my one to start, but DJ, it looks like Rotobot's going with you on this one. Says to start Anthony Richardson over Kyler in week 2. Gives a kind of a definition of why. And for this one, it breaks it down as saying Anthony Richardson's rushing upside is immense, evidenced by his 56 yards and a touchdown on 6 carries in week 1, leading to 27 fantasy points. Facing a defense that allowed the most rushing yards to quarterbacks last season, his dual threat capability is key. On the flip side of things, Murray, returning from injury, had an inconsistent week 1, completing multiple passes, but struggling under pressure. Actually, very true. The Cardinals face a defense that ranks top 10 in pass defense, DVOA, which is advanced stat metric, limiting his ceiling. So Richardson's explosive potential and favorable matchup offer a higher floor and ceiling across all formats, projecting 25 plus points compared to Murray's 18 to 20.
So very interesting.
Thoughts on that?
The one thing I will say is I could see Anthony not having a huge game is I think there's a chance Jonathan Taylor could go off, and then that just means AR just kind of handing the ball off, playing a little methodical, doesn't have to put on the cape, if you will, like he did against Houston. So he might not have to. But even in that case, you get in the red zone, having that 11-on-11 run game, that's a little bit different. And Shane Steichen he gets creative down there. So there's still opportunities for him to score touchdowns. So I'm going to lean towards that one because I think he has the ability for fantasy football to be superhuman some weeks, like Cam Newton used to be.
Yeah.
Like some of those mobile quarterbacks that get in the end zone, like Josh Allen can be at times. So I'm going to lean that one. Although Kyler Murray at the same time, that's never a bad choice in fantasy either. Like that was this. So I like both of them. I agree with the Rotobot on this one though. I think it lays it out pretty well. And Green Bay got moved against the Eagles. Like that offensive line moved them.
Yeah. But okay, so we had one quarterback matchup, and this one's a little more rushing intensive. Let's have another quarterback conversation, and this one is your favorite team from Week 1, and my hot pick for should be a good Week 1 start last week that panned out really well.
Hmm.
And we're gonna go with Dak versus Baker. So who should I start in Week 2? Dak Prescott or Baker Mayfield? DJ, you obviously know my opinion. I'm a big Baker stan. I think Baker should still be the quarterback in Cleveland, and I think he showed that as kind of how good he really can be, and especially now that he has weapons, that team looks really good, and it looks really good. So I'm going Baker here for my Week 2 start.
I stand by. I think Baker is that good because he got expedited from Cleveland. I say if he's still in Cleveland, then it's one of those things. What got where he is now was because of what happened before. I think if you take that away, but quickly, I'm taking Dak because he's playing the Saints.
Yeah, and Rotobot goes with me this time, so count one for me. So Baker Mayfield in Week 2 over Dak Prescott. Mayfield's explosive Week 1, 289, 4 touchdowns. By the way, second closest quarterback to getting over 300 yards in the week. Against the Commanders' weak pass defense shows his high ceiling. Now he faces the Bears, who allow 8.2 yards per attempt and rank poorly. And so Baker is poised for another strong performance. Prescott's modest Week 1, 179 yards and 1 touchdown raises concerns, especially against the Saints defense, ranked top 5 in 2023 for fewest passing yards allowed. So Mayfield projected over 25 plus points across formats. His favorable matchup is the reason that makes him the clear choice.
Interesting. All right. So we can go ahead and jump on ahead now because we got some more. We're not just going to do quarterbacks here. We don't pick favorites here.
No, so we'll jump into running backs here. And DJ, you had a good one here. Jerome Ford versus J.K. Dobbins. I'll let you take your pick first.
I like J.K. Dobbins because we said it. LA's going to run that heck out of the ball. It looks like JK's the guy. It looks like he's healthy. And Harbaugh, it would be like him to run a former Ohio State Buckeye into the ground. So, you know what? Give me J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, for me as well. I think I'm going J.K. Dobbins here. I like Jerome Ford, but I think that Browns offense has some questions to be answered first. And, when Rotobot AI gets this answer back to us, I think I don't know. I'll be surprised if they go Jerome Ford. Honestly, I think given the statistics, given the projections, it seems likely that it's J.K. Dobbins. And I'm wrong. It goes Jerome Ford. And the reason it gives it is Ford, coming off an 18.9 PPR point performance, plays the Jaguars, who allowed the 8th most fantasy points to running backs and 1.32 adjusted yards before contact per attempt. With a 73% snap share and 64% rush attempt share, Ford's usage is elite. Conversely, Dobbins, despite a strong Week 1 performance, faces the Panthers' stout run defense. So Ford's matchup and volume edge project him to outscore J.K. Dobbins. So, it says basically expect Ford to capitalize on Jacksonville's defensive vulnerabilities for a high fantasy output. Okay, that's a fair assessment.
I respectfully disagree, though, because the reason that Jaguars defense wasn't great was because Devin Achane had like a 60 yards receiving or something ridiculous like that on top of it. Devin Achane in the open field receiving does not count. We cannot let anyone else count to that standard. He is way too damn fast for that. I'll also add in there, too, Panthers do have a stout run defense when your boy Derek Brown is there, but he is not going to be there this week. Unfortunately, they will. You take him out of there, I think that changes the map a little bit because he counts as 3 humans. That allows you to play 14 on 11. So we'll see how stout it stays now that he's not in there. But statistically, this is fair.
I do want to point out real fast, when we had our Baker Dak conversation just a second ago, it is worth noting this is still in beta while we are testing it out right now. They let us try to test this out live so we can get ready for the kickoff of this app to be launched. Part of that comes from the statistics that they input. Sometimes it doesn't always fully compute the data correctly. So last year they used the Bears as the Week 2 matchup, which is not their Week 2 matchup this year. It is the Lions. So just worth noting. Sometimes it's still getting over the hiccups. It's okay because right now, so far, I don't disagree with any of its picks nonetheless. So I get it.
The Lions are a favorable matchup for Baker by comparison as well, too, because that pass defense did let Matthew Stafford have a little bit of fun against them. So there is still a favorable matchup, and the Bears defense played this year might be more favorable than if they played the Bears.
Exactly. All right, we're going to jump to receiver real fast. Drake London versus Chris Olave. DJ, this is one that I imagine you are probably struggling with as a Chris Olave fan and a Drake London fan. If you had to pick, who are you picking?
I'm mad at both of them because they combined for less than 5 points last week, and I played both of them. But I'm going to take Drake London because I think they have it. They're playing the Eagles. The Eagles' pass defense is still kind of in shambles. You should just be able to put the ball up and let Drake London dunk.
Okay.
Oh, and the Saints play the Cowboys, and I like your Cowboys.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm gonna go Chris Olave. I think the Saints weren't a figment of our imagination in week one. I think they're gonna continue that into week two. I think Chris Olave is gonna get a lot of benefit this week, unless they decide to completely mess him over yet again. But it looks like Rotobot is backing me with this one. Over Chris Olave over Drake London in week two. Vulnerable Panthers defense for Olave versus then you have on the other side, as you mentioned, you have Drake London. So yeah, I mean, I'm not going to disagree. I think Chris Olave is the better pick here. I think we're splitting hairs, but I mean, for me personally, I thankfully don't have that argument.
Hmm.
But I do have one that we're about to talk about. Before we go to it, DJ, any thoughts on this one?
I have both of them, so whatever one I end up playing Sunday, please work. That's all that matters. I would play
Yeah,
both of them, but last time I did that, it did not work.
that's fair. All right, so we're going to talk about the one that I am the most frustrated by, not named CMC in week one, and one that I was concerned about going into the week anyways. And I voiced it a few times in our chat, but it got even worse. And even on the show last week, I mentioned, hey, you never know. This guy might go off for 3 touchdowns in the game. Well, he almost went off for 3 touchdowns. And I'm talking Isaiah Likely versus Mark Andrews. Same team. So this is going to take into account kind of their usage as well. So let's see what it has to say about kind of comparing the two for us between Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews. And I am concerned that maybe I need to go pick up Isaiah Likely in every round. But if I'm being honest, I'm going to do it anyways. I've already done it in every
Hmm.
week. So I am prepared to start Isaiah Likely over Mark Andrews. But yeah, I just think he's proved that he has a relationship with Lamar at the end of last season. I think it continued in this season against a Chiefs defense that was no slouch. But DJ, what do you think?
I'm still going to stay with Mark Andrews. I do think Mark Andrews is taking a step back and Likely is taking a step forward, but I do think there's more opportunity there for Andrews. I don't think Likely snuck up on everybody on Monday, to say the least. I don't think he's sneaking up after that, though.
Yeah, and well, it looks like Rotobot once again on my side here. Start
Never
Isaiah
will be.
Likely over Mark Andrews in week two. Like Likely leads tight ends with 21.6 half PPR points, so even more 1 point PPRs from 12 targets, 9 receptions, and 111 yards. Andrews conversely struggled with just 14 yards on 2 catches. Didn't even really get involved in that offense, for being honest. As the Ravens go up against the Raiders, who allowed the 5th most yards to tight ends last season. Likely's ascendancy and the Raiders' defensive weaknesses align perfectly. So the gist of it, start Isaiah Likely because it doesn't look like Mark Andrews is going to be as big of the part of the offense as we all were expecting. Also, a part of this that bothers me the most is there was an undisclosed car accident that Mark Andrews was in August that was not disclosed until after the game, and that was one of the reasons why he was not performing as well. So how much is that is left over? We'll have to wait and see. But
I'll have to wait and
that's
see.
Rotobot AI.
I still believe in Mark Andrews, but I get it as well too. But that like you said, that's Rotobot AI, something we'll be bringing in on the show a few times too, as the beta gets the kinks knocked out and as it becomes live here in less than a month. So definitely looking forward to breaking it out and maybe using it down the stretch. Maybe we'll have a link for everyone as well when it comes out. So help you maybe win some fantasy leagues, make some fantasy bets, help you out with just sports stuff in general. When you maybe help win you some money.
Yeah, I know I'm going to be using it for sure to try to go pick up any trades or waiver wire options going through the season. I know I'm excited for that feature as well. So that'll be one I look at, and don't be surprised if you see it in Fantasy Fridays at some point in time, maybe, or maybe we just decide to do something a little different every week with this through crunch time. But expect this for the rest of the regular season as we continue to work with Rotobot and try to help them perfect the Rotobot.ai chatbot, because honestly, it's a really cool feature. I see a lot of great possibilities for it being integrated with what we're doing already, as far as how you go about trying to figure out your fantasy football team. Because it's safe to say that not a lot of us are experts out there. I don't even think I consider myself an expert. Yes, I play a lot of fantasy football. Does that make me an expert? I don't know. I don't think so. I think I make too many dumb decisions, like benching Isaiah Likely instead of Mark Andrews, or drafting CMC in number 1 overall pick. So we'll see if it can help me make it through the regular season. Hopefully, my fingers are crossed that this gets me to a better finish than 2nd overall. I finally get a lifted trophy is my goal.
At last, it is on the horizon. But you know what? No matter how smart of a cook you are, you can never have too many tools to help you out for sure. But that was going to do it here for us on the High Low Sports podcast. We appreciate y'all for hanging out with us on this Wednesday evening, or if it was later on in the week. We appreciate Rotobot, of course, for joining us for Crunch Time. Once again, football's back. We love talking about it with you all. Let us know in the comments some of your fantasy football picks. Be sure to tune in for Fantasy Football Fridays, where I'm going to be looking at some guys to, in the same vein of what we talked about today, some guys to not panic on, some guys to relax, and some guys where I'm not going to say panicking because it's week one, where my armpits are getting a little bit sweaty because I'm a little bit nervous. Like, oh no. So you do want to stick around for that. And of course, DJ's best bets every Sunday. 3 for 4 last week. Damn you, Bryce Young, for running that touchdown instead of throwing it. So we're going to keep track of that throughout the year too, see if we can create some nice money as well. But we appreciate y'all for hanging out with us, and we'll see you all again next week.